morally for me, I wouldn't play a game I didn't pay for. You wouldn't hack a car, would you?
Hack a car.
Or whatever the commercial is.
Yeah, it's those the pirated movie commercials when you're in the AMC.
You wouldn't steal a purse with a baby in it, would you? Would you hack the baby? So yeah, let's just go ahead and say.
Hello and welcome to this episode, the newest episode of the Super Agile Bros podcast. My name is Kyle, and I'm here to invite you into your new favorite anime, movie, and gaming podcast. If this is your first time here, otherwise, you already know what it's about, and you're here on purpose. And so we're already your favorites, and you're just one of the Super Agile community here listening with us today. But without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce who we have here today. We got myself, Kyle, and we got the man himself, Steve. How's it going, Steve?
Hello. It is going fairly well for a Tuesday. This most fragrant of Tuesdays.
Fragrant. Now, what's the scent that's in the air?
It's that new podcast smell. You know, that newest episode.
Tasty.
It's more like musky.
Musky?
But
that
you kind of get used
musk.
to it.
So it's not going to be carried in Bath and Body Works then.
Well, I mean, some people like musk. That's a thing.
And some people like must with a T.
Do
they?
They
haven't. I don't know if anybody likes it.
Who likes must? Tell me now.
or musk with a K.
Mm-hmm.
You made me think of something though. When it comes to like scents, some people call them flavors, even though it's candles and it smells. Do you call them flavors too?
When you say some people, do you mean like lay people like you and I, or do you mean people who are part of the industry?
That's a great question. I don't think I know anybody who's a part of the candle industry.
Okay.
So lay people.
You mean ignorant people?
Ooh.
Do I call them flavors? Yeah, I probably do. And I hate myself for it every time, but I do, probably.
I mean, I guess taste and smell are like pretty closely linked, so...
Yeah, it's certainly understandable.
It's not the furthest departure. Oh, but before I get too far, I want to go ahead and... I got to welcome Brad to the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Brad's been awful quiet today.
Quiet over there, Brad. How's it going, man? That's Brad, our good old...
We lost
the way
Brad.
I remember him. As he lives and breathes.
As he lives and squeaks.
If you haven't already noticed, it's another duo cast. It's just me and Steve today. So You're in for a special treat. And our conversation today is going to be around... it's kind of topical these days, a little bit. I mean, I think it pretty much stays topical the further we get into the more digital age of games. And the longer that games are around in general... games just phase out, or they stop being supported, or they just disappear. They get discontinued. Console generations come. So old things, fall away. So we're going to be talking about DRM and game preservation, game ownership, and why it matters. What can we do to stop our favorite games from disappearing, Steve? What can we do?
The spoiler is nothing. You can do nothing.
Well, thanks for tuning in today, everyone.
All is lost. No, what you can do, we'll talk about it. Yeah. There's a few things you can do.
I mean, I kind of posed the question already if you would want to get into it.
Well, do we want to maybe start further back and talk about the issue?
Sure.
Yeah, so this is something that I would say like half passionate about. I think every gamer cares about this one way or another. Yeah. But depending on who you are and what side you fall on, it's either a question of like ownership and preservation versus like piracy. It's like how people think of it. And the reason this came up, the reason I broached this to you was that Nintendo has yet again been not litigious. I'm sure they would be if given the chance, but it was in the news in the last couple of days. People have been the Steam Deck is, right? We've talked about the Steam Deck.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, Steam's version of the Switch.
Yes, it's a handheld PC essentially. It can run PC software, and that means it can run emulators. And there are, I think, 2 good emulators right now for the Switch, excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
And on the Switch. But that's a different topic. And so one of the cool things you can do with your Steam Deck, therefore, is play handheld Nintendo Switch games, without the Nintendo console. And so people are on YouTube and they're showing this off, like, look what I can do. Educational stuff. And Nintendo is taking down these videos.
It really doesn't take much.
Just a whiff of that musk will bring them running.
Man, that's pretty ingenious for people, though. I mean, the handful of people who have Steam Decks, I hear they're really hard to get, but to immediately start playing Switch games on it, which I'd imagine run maybe a little better on. What do you?
Well, they'll run better. It depends, right? Because the Steam Deck itself, I think the screen is technically lower resolution. I haven't looked at it.
Okay.
But I mean, you're otherwise it has definitely more resources. So if you don't care about battery life, it also has a worse battery.
In the Switch.
I don't know if let me rephrase that. The battery itself may not be worse. I think it actually is, but it might be the same size, like milliamp per milliamp. But when you're playing Switch games on it, it will not play them as long as the Switch will.
I guess that's fair. Is to be emulated. So
but like you can play Smash Bros on it, and I saw a video of people playing Smash Bros, and they were having shader compilation issues. Ooh. But those are like temporary. After you play for a few minutes, it evens out at 60 frames per second.
Nice.
In theory, you could play games at higher frame rates than they're supposed to be played. Not Smash, but other games. Mario Kart.
Ooh.
Maybe. I don't know.
I'd be down to see that. So I haven't actually read this article or heard much about it before you mentioned it. So they're just coming after the videos, not the people themselves.
Yeah. They're saying they are claiming copyright infringement, which is not correct. They're not. No one's abusing their copyrights.
Thank you, YouTube.
Yeah, thanks, YouTube. We know you try, but that's just the latest thing Nintendo does. They're all about. They hate emulation.
Oh, they do with a passion. Yeah. They hate emulation and they hate their fans because they don't like fan games either. Like anything that's using their IP for profit or just for fun, they will come at you with the full force. And I don't get it, to be honest. Like other IPs and the publishers and they seem to be so much more gracious, but I mean, emulation's it's been around. It's not going anywhere. The Steam Deck is just another platform for it, and so for them to kind of attack it, I don't really get it.
I guess the position they have is that emulation is piracy. Like if you emulate, you are a pirate, even if you own the game, even if you've bought it a dozen times, you don't have the right.
In their eyes.
Yeah, it's really frustrating actually because, there's a couple of frustrating bits. I'll just stick to what I was about to say, which is if you have their Nintendo Switch Online, the
membership,
they have a bunch of old games from super old consoles. Those are emulated.
Yeah.
They're not ported. They're emulated.
Right. So they just want to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And charge you again for it or a monthly rate.
Yeah.
It's always the bottom line, man.
I forget what game it was. They got caught recently because they, I think it was Super Mario 64, but I don't know if it was part of that Super Mario trilogy pack.
I think I know what you're talking about, and it was part of the trilogy pack. Yeah, there were some old glitches that they saw in the emulators that were part of those games.
Right. So not only this is what that means. Not only were they emulated, but that means that they were specifically using ROMs that were available online instead of their own in-house.
Right.
Which is so funny to me. It's like they were literally profiting from the emulation and ROM scene.
Right. Somebody else did the work. And they were like, yeah, we'll take that. Sure. Yeah. We'll sell it.
Yeah.
Man. And man, the selection on their virtual console outings after the Wii Virtual Console have been sad. And this one that we're talking about now on the Switch is pretty recent. You know, it's like they're starting to drip feed because they know people are just hungry for the past library in some capacity. Yeah. It's pretty predatory if you think about it, the way they're kind of handling it.
Yeah. What is your favorite? Well, let me ask a different question. Have you emulated? Do you emulate games?
I have.
Legally.
I have downloaded some emulators for like the old Pokemon games. And so yeah, I own those. I owned Pokemon Blue and Red, but I emulated Yellow. So I guess technically I didn't purchase the same version, if you want to put it that way, but I barely played it. It was more of an experiment for me. I quickly moved, I guess, from your run-of-the-mill emulation to messing with stuff like Mugen and Open Bore, just because they kind of gave me, like, I guess, a similar feel, because I really like the old beat-em-up games. But What's
Open Bore?
So it's Open Beats of Rage, and it was pretty much like the source for the Beats of Rage games, but in a similar format to Mugen, to where, you know, you have access to all the assets and the code and stuff, so you can put characters in there and change things up. And there's actually a whole website just dedicated to open bore games. And so they have ones where, you know, somebody's only put Street Fighter characters in there. But I think there is some overlap between Beats of Rage. No, that's Streets of Rage. No, that isn't. What am I thinking of? Final Fight.
I don't know.
Thinking of Final Fight and Street Fighter. Anyway, so yeah, so people bring those other characters from these other games and put them into this beat 'em up format, and then they, you know, change other things too. But that's pretty much the crux of it. Is, you know, it was a really, really quick and dirty way to make a beat 'em up game. It's pretty fun, actually. But so, what about you? What's your favorite game that you've ever emulated legally?
I have to think about it. So I have also emulated Pokemon Yellow, but I, in fact, own Yellow. Actually, that was one of my first. I think that was one of my first emulations. I was playing it on Android.
Ooh.
On my phone, and that was fun for a while. I could actually, because it's Android, I could actually connect a Wiimote. And so I was playing with the Wiimote sideways, and I had, you know, the D-pad and the big button.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, actually doesn't sound that bad.
This feels like a Game Boy, yeah.
Yeah. The Wii remote. It really does feel, like, haptically does feel a lot like the Game Boy. Which wasn't bad. It's just kind of a strange choice, I guess.
No, it's good. It's really good. It's something I kind of miss about the Joy-Cons, because the Joy-Cons have those 4 buttons. They don't have a real D-pad.
No, they don't really. It doesn't feel very good most of the time.
Yeah,
I'm not. I guess since you mentioned it, I'll just say I'm not happy with the Joy-Con situation. I think they're functional, and I think the technology is cool. You know, always having 2 controllers is like really novel.
Yeah.
But the execution, it leaves a lot to be desired. That's my soapbox.
There's a lot of compromises there.
Yeah. Joy-Con drift is also still an issue. But hey.
You know, I mean, all right, so here's the thing about Joy-Con drift. Nintendo will fix your Joy-Cons if you send them in.
I've heard about that. How long does it take? No
questions asked. I don't know how long it takes. But
I heard that it was a toss-up between them fixing it or just sending you another one, which I guess for you it's about the same.
Yeah, practically it's the same. Unless you had some like real special connection to your controllers.
I feel like that kind of it kind of mirrors the issue we're having with like the DRM situation, is that rather than like fix these issues for the community, they're willing to like, I don't know, find ways around it that are arguably worse. I mean, they get the job done, sure. We're getting drip fed these games, and you'll get your Joy-Con fixed, but it's like, you know, why not make better Joy-Cons?
You know, it is not ideal that we have to send our broken stuff to Nintendo, but I'll give them credit if they're willing to undertake this expensive and onerous, you know, policy of, oh yeah, send your stuff to us and we'll fix it. No questions asked, or we'll replace it, I guess. To me, that says that it must be really difficult or expensive for them to actually fix the Joy-Cons.
Maybe more expensive than the amount of people who would be willing to send their Joy-Con back versus just
they're probably not. Walmart. They're probably betting most people won't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Lazy folks. Because they did something similar with, remember Mario Party on 64, where people were destroying their hands with the controller? Oh, yeah. And the controller wouldn't break. Those things were, you know, built to last, but they would send people gloves if they complained. It was like, they'll always find a way to be like, you know, reach out to us and we'll somewhat fix it.
But I can appreciate that. It's kind of petty to send someone gloves.
It is very petty.
But the mentality of, look, maybe we can't fix your problem at the root, but we can at least alleviate the symptoms, and we're going to do it. I appreciate that. They're doing something. A lot of companies wouldn't do anything.
To me, it says, we don't care, but just to hush you up.
We don't care. Please don't sue us.
Right.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I should be more cynical.
I mean, if it was our first time doing something this way, then I think we could give them the benefit of the doubt. But no, Nintendo has a track record.
I have another solution. If your Joy-Cons are drifting, are you ready for this?
Deja vu.
You can buy bottles of this stuff. It's called contact cleaner, or like electronic contact cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a solvent, solvent in a bottle. You just spray it out of a little straw, like a canned air can. Do not drink it.
Oh,
do not drink this, Tide Pod generation. This is not tasty. It does not taste. It's not good.
TikTok challenge. Drink.
So apparently the issue with the Joy-Con sticks is that the sensors that live under the actual thumbstick are covered in a layer of graphene or graphite, probably not graphene, graphite. And over time, the sticks going back and forth can like cause graphite dust to build up in that area. And it messes with the sensors. So what I found, what I heard online and what works for me is you get under those little flaps under the thumbsticks with some electronics cleaner and you spray them and you wiggle them around and maybe shake them a bit, maybe spray them again, whatever you want. It's probably best if you don't do this while you're playing, like maybe have them be off as much as possible. But it is made for electronics, so you don't...
Oh, so you don't have to take it apart to do this?
No. You don't have to take it apart. There's like a little rubber flap under the Joy-Con thumbstick. And I just stick the straw under that flap and spray it and kind of, point it in different directions. And that will give new life to my Joy-Cons for like a couple months before they start drifting again.
Months? Man, that's so sad.
I mean, it's sad, but I bought one can of this stuff when the Switch came out. Or a year after the Switch came out, and I haven't even come close to running out of it.
So pretty soon they're going to have a little can of that in the Switch boxes. They're going to have a Nintendo label on it.
They won't even change the packaging. They'll just tape the can to the outside of each package.
Charge you like $12 for it.
No, it'll be free because that's what they do.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But instead of the cost of a Switch going down, it'll just... Well, actually, it did go down, didn't it?
When the OLED came out, I think, maybe?
No, it wasn't even when the OLED came out. I think it's since the OLED came out, they finally relented. And they were like, all right, we'll make the old Switch, the non-OLED, cheaper. I don't know how much it is now, though.
I heard that if you're buying a Switch for the first time, it's not enough for it to feel like a discount to get the original Switch. They said you might as well go ahead and just get the OLED because it's
I mean, for sure, that's what they want. Something. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a price that makes any sense. You know.
Plus, the OLED just looks better with those white Joy-Cons.
It looks very nice.
Yeah.
It'd be tempting if the hardware was different.
Yeah, don't get me started. Everyone keeps telling me, so my Switch is broken. My fan, the Switch works, but the fan is broken, and so I have to be careful not to let it overheat. Mm-hmm. Especially when it's docked and I'm playing something for more than 20 or 30 minutes. All my friends make fun of me because I talked so much trash about the OLED when it came out, and then my fans broke. And they were like, "Oh, you're gonna buy a new one? You should buy an OLED." And I just refuse to buy a new one at all. I just keep using the same one.
I mean, it still runs, you know?
It still runs. Especially handheld, no problem.
I mean, hey, are they going to pay for it?
In fact, it's even better in handheld mode because there's no fan, so it's even quieter.
So your hands get all sweaty. Immersive
My hands
experience.
Don't get sweaty. I mean, they get the same amount of sweaty as they would have otherwise.
The same amount. Just as greasy.
Maybe a little more. I do have greasy hands. It's terrible.
So I think the thing that bothers me the most about the Joy-Con drift, and like kind of segueing back into this DRM situation, is that I guess one of the ways that we can preserve games, at least older games, is up until recently, you know, there weren't games that were only digital. And so if you still have a physical copy of the game, it's fine. And most old consoles, if they're not in direct sunlight or, you know, in some terrible situation, will still work. And it's like the issue I've had with, I guess, old hardware is that I don't remember like my SNES controllers. I mean, they didn't have joysticks, but they didn't have like, I guess, a similar thing to drift. Like even when the rubber was coming off of the button tips and stuff like that stuff would still work. It would still register, you know. And so I think that's what disappoints me the most about this new stuff is like it's more expensive, but it's worsely made. Not it's shabby. It's bad. It's badly made. It's poorly made.
It's so bad.
And so it's just like, why not meet us halfway? You know, at least make better stuff.
Yeah. So, I didn't actually answer the question.
Oh yeah, go ahead and answer.
I was talking about Pokemon. My favorite. I don't emulate a lot to generalize here, but I did recently download and install Dolphin. And I was playing Metroid Prime, the GameCube version. And that was really cool. Like you can download, and to be clear, I own Metroid Prime on GameCube and on the Wii. So
you bought it twice.
You know, that's right. Twice as nice. So now I'm playing it guilt-free on my PC.
Somewhere else. Neither one of your purchases.
Well, I played the heck out of them when I bought them.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's not like it's just been idling in my closet. I destroyed those. I've probably played Metroid Prime 1 and 2 each at like 7 or 8 times all the way through.
Wow. That's a testament.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. So I was playing that on my computer with a GameCube controller, and that was sick because, 1440p. I downloaded some upscaled textures, playing at a smooth 60 FPS, which, I mean, it always played at 60, I think. But, man, that game it looks so nice with a higher resolution.
It felt like it was at that high resolution when the game first came out. Like, the visuals for the GameCube were already super impressive.
Yeah.
So
even without the high-res textures, with the original I mean, definitely some stuff looks muddy, but all the edges are so crisp. It's like, ooh, I can see the beam.
Ooh. You bring up a good point about one of the benefits, I guess, to emulation is like the upscaling. Because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there have been games that were kind of like revitalized because they were emulated. Like the hardware that they were made for couldn't really support the game's vision. And so then once they were emulated, then people were actually able to play the game. There was one I saw earlier, not earlier, but recently. I can't remember the name of it. I want to say it was like a tactics game or something like that, where it was very, I guess, heavy as far as gameplay. But when it came out, it was just super limited and they had to cut stuff that was like still in the game. I don't remember, but it was like because of emulation, because people in the community are so dedicated into keeping these games alive, and I guess letting them live up to their full potential when the technology has finally caught up with the vision of the developers at that time. It's just like, man, it breathes new life into old experiences sometimes.
Yeah. I know some people who are listening are going to be like, oh, but CRTs were so cool. And like, they add, yes, absolutely. Things don't look the way they were meant to look if you don't play them on the TV they were made for. I get that. Everything after CRTs, though, could probably do with a crispness. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Especially like 3D graphics. Huge.
Oh yeah, huge.
Oh my gosh, dude! I didn't play very much, but I did also emulate for a little bit. Wind Waker.
Ooh,
that game. The cell shading works so well. You don't even need better textures. You just need the high resolution. It looks so crisp. It's unreal.
Man, Wind Waker is one of those games that no matter how old they get, at least the way I feel about it now, the art style is just timeless, and so it could be emulated on anything and still look just fantastic.
Dang, now I want to play a Wind Waker.
Can we play it on your Steam Deck?
I don't have a Steam Deck. I'm not planning on getting one in the near future.
No, I thought you were sold.
I think they're super cool. I just have a lot of devices right now. Like I'm trying to get a PS5. I have a Switch. I might, buy a new Switch to replace the old one. But even if I buy a new one, I'm going to keep the old one because it's hackable. That way I can dump my ROMs and legally play my games in emulation.
Mm-hmm. They'll still come find you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
they'll find me. But that brings up what I was going to talk about, which is what one of the things was ownership, right? Like, how do you own the game?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you to own a game?
So I think that the community has done like a really good thing in that they suggest, only emulating games that you've paid for. And in this day and age, it's not uncommon to be able to get a digital version of something that you bought physically. I remember DVDs did that a lot years ago, where you'd buy the box and then there would be like a digital download or something, a key that you could download to your iPod, the one that could play movies.
Yeah,
like they incentivized enjoying their content on whatever you could, because you paid for it. You couldn't distribute it, of course, but since you bought it, you could enjoy it in whatever capacity you wanted to. And so I think that that's a fine part of the emulation scene, but I know that that's just not how the world works overall. Is that most people, I'd imagine, who emulate stuff do it because they don't have access, because they never purchased it. But if you bought it, I think it's fine. And I don't know what that means, I guess, for like the future, as far as ownership of games and them only being digital after you purchase them. Because we'll probably talk about this later, but we're kind of moving towards a day and age where everything you purchase is digital and somebody else is effectively holding on to it.
Yeah.
And so if they ever decide to take down whatever platform your digital purchase is on, then, you don't have access to it and there's nothing you can do about it. So, I think that's going to be an issue in the future. But right now, when we're in that crossroads, I think it's fine to, I guess, if you bought something and you know how to access it otherwise, sure.
Yeah. Let's say, for the sake of argument, let's go ahead and say that we don't agree with playing games you did not pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, there might be an argument for that, or like, oh, it helps revenue, or it helps interest in a game. Let's just go ahead and wipe it all off. This isn't a moral statement, although morally for me, I wouldn't play a game I didn't pay for. You wouldn't hack a car, would you? Someone said that to me today.
Hack a car.
Or whatever the commercial is. I wasn't even listening. I just listened to it while I was working.
It's those the pirated movie commercials when you're in the AMC.
You wouldn't steal a purse with a baby in it, would you? Would you hack the baby? So yeah, let's just go ahead and say piracy, that is playing a game you did not pay for, is a no-no. However, I think some people would say that playing a game that you paid for on a platform where you did not pay for it is still piracy.
Ooh.
And to that I say fa-chow.
Ka-chow?
Bagouch.
I am speed. Wow. Yeah. So, do you want to elaborate on your ni hao?
So, I mean, that's what we've been talking about, right? Like, I bought a game on the Game Boy Color. Well, I didn't buy it. My parents bought it. And Nintendo would say, well, that means you can only play it on the Game Boy Color unless we sell it to you again for the Game Boy SP. And to that, I say, no. I bought it once. I should be able to play it, in its packaging, not its packaging, but like in its original release state, right?
So I think that's kind of like a case by case issue, because there also was a time where backwards compatibility was like a real thing, and it seems like that's being purposefully phased out. If you buy a PlayStation game and then buy a PlayStation 2, you can play your PlayStation 1 game on it. And they're not going to make you... Even now, actually, we've been playing Fallen Order. And I had a physical copy of Jedi Fallen Order that I put into my PS5. And it was like, do you want to download the free PS5 version? Or do you want to play the PS4 version? The UI was kind of bugging out. And every time I tried to start the game, it started copying the PS4 version to my PS5 hard drive, which was a really weird thing. I would never want to do that. But
yeah. So that's what the PS4 does. I assume the PS5 does too. It copies the disc to your hard drive.
Yeah. And so, well, it was after it gave me the choice to choose the PS5 version, but then it would always default to copy whenever I went to the icon on my list. So I
see. That's annoying.
So I had to really intently make sure I was choosing the PS5 version every single time I started up the game. But anyway, I say that to say, this whole, I guess, cross-platform idea is, or not cross-platform, well, yeah, maybe cross-platform, playing the same game on the platform you didn't buy it for. I don't know. I feel like you still bought a ticket, but you're just sitting in a different seat at that point. Like you paid for entry. And I think the system isn't really set up in most ways for people to play the same game in different ways. But then that's like the beauty of emulation, is that, if you don't have access to your Game Boy anymore, but you did pay for it, then if you can play it on your computer, 15 years, 20 years later, then I feel like it just makes sense because of how time has progressed.
So to you, there's two separate questions of compatibility, we'll call it. One is a question of time, where, I want to play this game in perpetuity across my future devices. And one is a question of let's just call it device space, where you want to maybe... not you specifically, but one might want to buy a game for PlayStation and also play it on Xbox. And so you say the time argument is sound, but the device argument is not sound.
I guess, yeah, the long and short of it is,
okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But do you think it's wrong to, like, if I buy a PlayStation game and I emulate it on my computer, would you call that piracy, or would you just say, oh, that's an unreasonable ask? Or both?
That's a kind of I think it's kind of a tough one, to be honest. I would lean towards saying it's reasonable if you since you paid for it. But I also know that you could purchase the game for either the PlayStation or to play it on your PC. So it's not like the game is limited only to PlayStation in most cases. I mean, like, there are exclusives and stuff.
So it's a question of availability to you.
Yeah. So
since you're able to pay for it, you should pay for it.
I think holistically, yes. Like you should make that choice up front, because there are games that I would like to play on different platforms even these days. Like the last game that I bought that I was considering which platform to buy it on was this new Ninja Turtles game, something Shredder. I can't remember the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But there's a friend of mine that I usually play beat 'em up games with that we've played on either PC, Switch, or PS or PlayStation. And so, it's available on all those platforms. But I made my decision based on who I was going to play it with and when I was going to play it. And so now that I've bought it for Switch, I don't think that I should have access to it on my PC just because, I bought it on Switch. Because it's like all of those options were available to me at the start. And so it's not a question of access. It's a decision that I made. And so it would be piracy now to say, oh, well, I just want to go back on my decision. Or I want to double dip,
Without paying a double dip.
Right.
But you wouldn't have a problem maybe emulating Smash on your computer because you can't buy Smash on PC.
Generally, yes, because I purchased Smash before.
Because you purchased it and because you can't, it's impossible to purchase on PC.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm with you actually on that. That makes sense to me. I was probably a little too broad in my initial statement.
We got there though.
We got there. No, that's a good clarification.
I think people are going to disagree too. I'm sure there are people who are, like you said earlier, on the bandwagon for both sides of it. Where, well, if emulation is so bad, then it shouldn't be available at all. But since it is available, I'm going to indulge. And people who say that all emulation is piracy. If you want the game, find the physical copy on eBay or purchase the game on Steam or some equivalent. So. Yeah.
The Nintendo position.
We hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I have thoughts about that, but I guess that's unfortunate because it really just does come down to like your personal little moral streak, I guess. And probably the way you see the world.
Yeah. I'll never condone stealing, but I don't know. Digital assets, especially, are kind of finicky, I guess, in what I'd consider to be stealing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that so this is cool, right? One of the cool things that Sony does is, like you mentioned earlier, when you get a physical game, it downloads to the hard drive, and then the disc really becomes a key. Mm-hmm. So if you give away the disc, you won't be able to play it, even though it's on your hard drive. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the faster access to the game files because it's there already. It's on the hard drive. But you still get the freedom to do as you will with the physical game. Now, we're moving more towards like a future where the game is on the disc because the disc or the game got tons of patches. How many games have we heard of these days that like you put it in and it just downloads the whole thing?
Right. Day one patches are the norm.
Or worse, you buy like the physical edition. Isn't that what just happened with the new God of War Ragnarok? They were talking about the physical editions, and then it turns out that it just has a code
in the box.
I don't want to believe disc? That's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's true. Maybe I misheard something because that doesn't seem right to me. That seems bonkers. I
don't know. I mean, they're really, like what you're saying, they're really only one step away from doing that, because I do appreciate, the download to the degree that the games do run faster, but how much space it takes up on your hard drive, and then sharing the game. Like, I mean, if you want to get technical about it, you can't play like on older consoles. If you don't have the disc, you can't play the game. So on that front, it makes sense. But to sell me a disc but not have the game on the disc feels a little bit like disingenuous. It doesn't feel like a genuine experience of purchasing the physical. Like, what am I actually buying?
Yeah. And there's always the worst. Oh, you know what? I just had a crazy idea. What if you could buy a game, say on the Switch, right? You buy a digital game. What if you could also buy empty cartridges? And if you decided, I don't want to own this anymore, you could, pick an option on the Switch. You put this empty cartridge in your Switch. It burns the game to the empty cartridge, and invalidates your license. All right, so you no longer have it in your store. And then it's basically a digital to physical conversion.
Huh. And now, so that physical cartridge won't work on your Switch?
It'll still work on your Switch, but it's not connected to your account, and you can't like download it from the shop again.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think in order for that to work, first off, they'd have to have like consistency between digital and physical. I think there's still a little bit of a disparity between buying the physical version of. I think it's still a little bit more expensive.
Oh, you mean price consistency?
Price consistency, yeah. I mean, maybe it'll make up for it by buying this blank cartridge, but
yeah, the cartridge would probably be expensive.
I feel like people would also find a way to cheese that and, take the cartridge out halfway while it's burning and then cause it to start over and just keep doing that a couple of times and then burn multiple copies by cheesing the system.
Maybe. I mean, there's absolutely the possibility for foolishness like that. Maybe people will develop like an adapter that just hooks the cartridge slot directly to a PC.
Ooh. Yeah, that would be man. Would it make emulating games easier if it went directly to your PC at that point?
I mean it's literally dumping the ROM.
So Nintendo should do this so that we have access to more emulated games. That's what you're saying.
But it'd be a cool idea, right? Like to be able to, because then you can buy a game physically or otherwise. And you'll always know. It'd be even better. This actually might be a good idea from their perspective, because it'll be better to buy digital, because you know that whenever you decide to burn your game, it'll be the complete game with all the patches up to that point. It won't be whatever was shipped on day one.
Yeah.
Which I think more and more in the future is going to be less and less of the game.
Right. Yeah, these games are getting constant patches.
Yeah. Nintendo actually, they do have, I mean, obviously they have patches to some of their like live service-y type games like Splatoon or Smash. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think the Mario Kart or the Super Mario thing has only had like 2 or 3 patches, and none of them were like early. Like
I wouldn't be surprised.
The 1.0 version was completely playable from what I recall. So was Metroid, I think.
I do feel like that is one thing that Nintendo has held on to over the years that other studios and publishers haven't, is the idea of shipping a finished game. It's like, if Nintendo is making it, I don't think they're ever going to ship a game that just won't. If you don't have an internet connection, then the game's still going to run fine. Like, if you get it from Nintendo.
Yeah.
Wow. While other games, it's a toss-up whether or not you'll be able to play it at all, or how far you'll be able to get before a game-breaking bug they knew about and shipped the game with anyway shows up. And so I do appreciate that. I think that's why they also get so much grace, if you will, on how they handle their games, is that even in especially the back catalog, which is why their games get emulated so much, it's just so many strong titles. Like, that's the whole motive that I feel like people really want to hold on to these games, is because you want to pass it down. Yeah. It's like the experiences are just so good.
Yeah. I mean, some people just want to save games for the sake of archiving and like, the history.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally respect that. That's not me. I think someone needs to do that because someday some future Steve is going to be like, what was this game like? And I won't be able to find out because no one saved it and I didn't save it.
Right. And it's already happened quite a lot.
Yeah. But these evergreen games, like there's a lot of reason to keep them around.
And I think as like communities, like the speedrunning community, that just they play games over and over again, find new things about games, and I guess really just shine a light on games in a completely different way. Like having access to a game for decades means something different than just having it in an archive too. Because like they're discovering stuff, games that we grew up with, they discovered new stuff. What was it? Donkey Kong Country on the Nintendo 64. They discovered like a hidden banana last year.
I didn't know anything about this.
Something like that. Yeah, one of the rainbow bananas. The rainbow bananas. Yeah, like within the last like 3 years, I want to say. Somebody was either speedrunning or just playing it, 100%ing it. Excuse me. They found another banana, and it just blew everybody in the Donkey Kong Country's mind.
Right, of course.
And it's like discoveries like that will never be made if the game just disappears.
And these people aren't playing on original hardware.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
It's just not feasible.
No.
Speed running, other, niche uses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the emulations, they actually lend themselves pretty well. You have save states and, able to use different controller configurations because even to this day, games have an issue with accessibility and adding different ways of control and stuff like that. So I think, even with just giving access, they also provide, the availability to make games better in some cases. Like maybe not changing the game itself, but just how the game is played and experienced.
So what are your thoughts on games that require like an online server, like multiplayer games, right?
Mm-hmm.
They require that somebody host a server, and it's usually that somebody is usually a Nintendo or a Sony or I guess a Microsoft.
Yeah. So I've actually played a couple of games that had pretty, I guess, strong-ish multiplayer presences, and last for a couple years and then get shut down. And it's a big detriment to those who are playing it. I mean, people get over it, of course, but I'm not a fan of the rinse and repeat that tends to happen. And so the games that I played, the first one was Gigantic. It was a
you played Gigantic?
I did, yeah. For those who don't know, it was a hero shooter style game, but it was super stylized, visually stunning game.
Yeah. Very pretty.
Anthropomorphic characters. Like nobody had a gun per se, but and so you would have these 5v5 battles, and the reason the game was called Gigantic is because on either side there is a large beast, and you're trying to make your way to the other side so you can defeat this beast, and that's how you win the round. But yeah, fun game. Probably the first game that I got into when I bought my PC. It had just come out. But yeah, not too long after, because it was free to play, but the devs were really focused on balancing the game, and so it had very little ways of making money when it first came out, which was kind of sad because it didn't start off in like an alpha either, or at least it wasn't in alpha very long. Like it was a full release game it was carrying a huge load of people and wasn't pulling in any revenue, so they couldn't last. You played Gigantic, Steve?
No, but I saw some videos about it. It looked really cool, but I'm not a hero shooter fan, really, so I avoided it. Well, I didn't even have to avoid it. I just didn't look for it.
For me, it was kind of like a similar experience that I had, I guess, with Hades, which is I would consider myself not to be really a hero shooter fan either. I played Overwatch for a little bit and got tired of it, just because I guess in those games it always seems like there's a certain build that your team has to have versus you playing the game and being able to have fun by picking different characters and doing whatever you want each match. I feel like Gigantic was a way to do this because, you know, it didn't matter what your team comp was. As long as you were sticking together, pretty much you'd do better than the other team type of thing. And so I really enjoyed that there was more freedom in the game in my experience. And it hadn't been around long enough to have a toxic community. So there was that. But if it was still around, yeah, I'd definitely recommend it. I'd probably still be playing it. But yeah, so it was super sad to see that game go. A lot of heartfelt like comments and stuff on the game's page. And then the second game, excuse me, that I played and then saw it die was have you heard of Spellbreak?
Ooh, that does sound familiar. Is it the one where you have, well, this doesn't describe a lot, I guess. It has like elemental spells like poison and ice and you can combine them and stuff?
Yeah.
It's like a spells only. Right. It's like a spells only shooter.
Yeah, it was pretty much like a spellcaster battle royale, and instead of like, you know, your typical weapons chest, you'd run around until you found these gauntlets, and they would give you these different elemental powers. And then there was also deeper systems in the game. So like you were saying, you know, if you had this one that shot out poison gas, you could also light the poison gas on fire if you had the fire gun, or if somebody else did. I think there was, and as the game grew, you know, these systems kept getting deeper and deeper. And so, yeah, I played the alpha of that game a couple years ago and joined the Discord, and it was this huge, big community was around it. And then a couple of weeks ago, actually, they announced, I don't think the game has shut down yet, but they announced that, yeah, the game is going to be closing its doors. And similar to Gigantic, you know, in the comments, people were like saying, I've really been enjoying this game. I wish there was a way to preserve it, to keep it around. And, you know, because there really isn't, it's because it is just a multiplayer game and there wasn't a single player aspect to it. There's really no way to keep the game around.
Well, what they could do is they could release the server client and then let people host their own servers.
Yeah, they could.
Or bundle it as part of the, you know, the game so that everyone has it. I mean, that's what a lot of PC games used to do, isn't it? Is you could play official servers. I was just reading this epic story about World of Warcraft.
Oh,
there are some people playing a version of World of Warcraft from like 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And they just keep playing this ultra old version.
Yeah.
And they're on their own, you know, isolated server, and they unlocked some event where like a giant dragon or the sleeper wakes up and destroys a bunch of stuff, and it was a big deal because there were certain loot opportunities that were very distinct and powerful that are no longer available because they woke the sleeper and you can't go back. So it's like they had this thing going for years and years and years, and they finally did it. And it's not like it's the end of the game. It's just one event. But to them, it was like, you know, it was the one thing they never wanted to do. And it's a really interesting story of like the politics where like one guild wanted to do it and then they didn't want to do it. And then some people went rogue and tried to do it anyway. And the rest of the guild stopped them. And like,
oh, wow.
And then they were like, you know what? The guild, let's just do the whole thing. And then now the other guilds hate them. So it's like...
they ruined everything.
Yeah, they ruined everything, yeah.
Man.
But the point is that, like, I mean, a lot of games do release some sort of client that people can use to host, and it, you know, the game can live forever.
Well, maybe that's the method of preservation then. Because
it has to be.
I actually knew of a story about World of Warcraft. A similar one. I don't know if it's the same one, but yeah, the server was going to be shut down. And there was a huge ceremony, like, in-game where, you know, characters who were prolific in their servers were walking down the street, and everyone was standing on this either side of the street emoting, like in the final hours of the game.
Wow.
Like, super, yeah. Like, there's videos of it. It's kind of strange, but at the same time, it's really like, I don't know. touching in a weird way.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
But the issue, I say, oh, just release the client. The issue is that people like Nintendo don't want to release the client.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, not that simple.
You know what? Maybe I can't get on Nintendo about this because they don't even have a lot of old multiplayer games like this.
That's true.
I guess Brawl would be one of the first ones where I'm like, what are you guys doing? Why can't we play Brawl online? But no one wants to play Brawl online, so it doesn't matter.
Give the people what they want. Brawl online. Nah, people want the Wii Virtual Console back, man.
That's very true, yeah. Speaking of Brawl online, people are playing Melee online. People love Melee so much.
Yeah.
Melee was never it was multiplayer. It was never online.
They advertised it as online multiplayer at one of the E3s or showcases?
When? Like back in the day?
Mm-hmm. Before it was released.
I know nothing. That might be true, but it's a lie.
It was a lie. It came out that it was
but you barely knew what online was.
Someone said it on the stage. I forgot who. I don't think it was Reggie. It might have been Reggie. But they were like, yeah, online multiplayer, and then didn't have it.
But yeah, fans have built an online client from the ground up, from what I recall, from what I understand. And
that's awesome.
That's how people play Melee now. It's mostly through it's called Slippy.
Oh yeah, I've heard about Slippy because they were doing tournaments and stuff.
They were,
especially during the pandemic.
They were. Nintendo actually banned them from doing online tournaments at some big fighting tournament.
Yeah.
They were like, you can't. We're not going to allow you because of Slippy, because you're tarnishing our game or whatever. So they weren't able to do it at all because it was like during COVID. It was an online only tournament.
Terrible.
Thanks, Nintendo.
Yeah, always there.
Yeah,
man, and stuff like that, man, is just, I don't understand. Like if people love what you made so much that they're willing to keep it alive, hours, days, months, years of work to keep it alive and thriving, and you just come through one day and say, nah, we don't want you to do that with it. Like, and a lot of the biggest thing about a lot of these tournaments and stuff is that a lot of the proceeds that go to charity. They're great fundraisers. They bring exposure both to the game, the community, the publisher. Like Nintendo would get publicity from this, 20-year-old game, positive publicity, because people are still playing it. Like that's a testament, because Melee didn't get any patches. I mean, people have patched it since then, but it's just like the game was such a strong foundation that it's lasted this long. Like it's a cult. It has a cult following, strong cult following. Even after Ultimate came out, Melee is still, because I think people regard Ultimate as a pretty top tier Smash game. I mean, at least number 2.
What would be nice? So, if we could emulate games to our heart's content, especially old games, then nobody would buy. Well, that's not true. Most people would not buy the remakes and remasters that these publishers make. Because, I mean, frankly, a lot of emulation is better than the remaster.
Bro.
I feel, because you have, more control over the game. You can change the controls. You can, do whatever. You can get into the ROM and mess around.
Prime example is the Grand Theft Auto remakes that just came out a year ago, because those have been being emulated for years.
Yeah, and
then for those remakes to come out, remasters, and be worse in so many aspects, it if anything, it kind of validated the need for emulations for certain games.
Yeah. But I was saying one cool aspect, depending on how you look at it, maybe it's not cool, that would force people like Nintendo to actually just release new games instead of re-releasing the same old games over and over.
Yeah.
Because there'd be less interest in Super Mario 64.
So do you think that, I guess, remakes and remasters, are they better than emulations? Like I guess the ones that, like, they did the Halo remastered trilogy. Like, would you prefer a remaster from the publishers over playing the original game if they're still good?
I think in general I would, because I'm a scrub, but I know a lot of people were mad specifically about Halo because the new graphics took away from the ambiance and atmosphere of the original. But I think the new graphics look great, so I can live with that.
And one of the smart things they did about it was actually they put in there you could switch like at any time between.
I do that all the time. I've been playing. That's the other thing, though, right? They didn't just re-release the game; they released a collection of like 5 games. So of course I'm going to buy that.
Right.
Yeah. Like, what's the point? I don't want to dig out my old Xbox 360 just to play Halo when I have it installed along with Halo 2, 3, and 4 and Reach. Like, what's the point?
Right.
Those old library graphics aren't that great.
They're charming.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're really in love with the style, I would say newer games are usually better. And in the case of the Halo, the Master Chief Collection, I think they've done better than any emulator would. But Nintendo can almost never say that.
No.
Yeah.
Because they haven't, I guess, proven. Has there been a Nintendo game that's gotten an actual, like, I know they did, what was it, The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening was technically a remake?
Oh, I see. I think other than, like, the graphics and the controls, I've heard that's, like, almost a 1-to-1 to the old game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never played either one.
I played a little bit of the new one, but yeah, I don't have a point of reference.
A lot of people just gasped. You what? Sorry.
And they tuned out right then.
Yeah, they quit the podcast. They quit being my friend.
Unfriended. So you got me thinking about this weird middle ground between like emulations and remakes. And
sure.
I don't know if it's still like a trend, but the mini consoles that came out, like there was the mini NES, was there a mini PS1 or was that just a leak or a speculation?
Sounds like it was just speculation.
There's a handful of them that came out, but they're pretty much, from what I understand, Raspberry Pis, where it was a small system that had these emulated games on it, but it was from the actual publisher. And I think in some ways,
emulation,
yeah, sanctioned. And I heard that in some ways they were not better, but like, I don't know, performance wise, they held up. So it was more consistent, I guess, than if you just grabbed, the ROM for yourself on your PC and then tried to run it. And then they had like the UI that was kind of reminiscent of the older consoles. So it was kind of more, it was like, I guess, a more fulfilling experience, if you will.
It was more polished, probably. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I guess more polished.
Fair. It's funny you say that. I have a friend who bought the NES, whatever, either the NES or the Super NES Mini, and immediately cracked it and filled it up with all sorts of games and emulates everything on it now.
That's awesome.
Because why not, right? Like,
yeah.
He paid for the hardware. He probably didn't pay for all the games that he has on there, but he's also a huge, old school gaming freak. So to him, that's heaven.
Heaven, West Virginia. Yeah.
Is West Virginia really heaven? I doubt it.
It's in the song, so it's got to be true. Or is it? Did they say almost heaven? Now I got to think of the lyrics. I don't know.
I don't even think it's close. It's West Virginia. Have you ever been to West Virginia?
No.
There's some good rafting, kayaking there.
Then I won't go. I had a very poor whitewater rafting experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was in my late teens-ish. And it was actually kayaking. We thought it was going to be rafting this time, but it was kayaking. And me and my good friend Jordan, we got into a kayak together. And we thought, they told us it was a short trail, right? And just so we wouldn't like crash into each other, they sent us out at different intervals.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. And so we were out there by ourselves, pretty much on the water. It was super calm water. So it was, it was kind of nice. But then, the thing about it is because you're still on the or on a trail that has rapids. So there were like drops and stuff. And so the first couple were fine. But then, man, later into our ride, thinking that we were pretty close to it being over, we hit this just horrible rapid. And, doing our best to go down, we kayaked, or not kayaked, but we'd, been rafting before. So they were like, okay, well, here's the paddles. You're good. Just don't die. And so,
perfect.
Of course, when we're going down this thing, because we're inexperienced, we flip the canoe or the kayak. And so then we have to figure out on our own, because nobody's around, how we flip this thing. Try not to drown. There's rapid water all around us. And we're both trying not to panic, and, trying to be tough guys, but thinking that our lives are over. Eventually, we did flip the thing. We got back into it. And then we were able to get to a beach that was nearby. But then on that beach, we decided, yeah, this is the last time. And I haven't been since. I've been to places for rafting before. My wife really loves doing it. And we were with the group, our youth group, and they went a couple more times after that. And bro, I stayed on shore every time.
Traumatized.
Legitimately. Like I thought my life was over. And,
I've actually had that happen. I almost drowned once. Not in a rafting situation, in a river situation.
You were just in a river?
Basically, yeah, it's a long story. I had a friend who couldn't swim, but he assured me that if I supported him in the river, he'd be fine. Spoiler alert, he was not fine. So he starts trying to use me as a buoy. And that did not work.
Buoy boy.
Thankfully, we had some friends nearby who... Well, by the time they showed up, this man was half passed out. So they didn't really help him at all. They just kind of, dragged him out of the water. Left me in the water by myself, so I eventually made it to the beach. I'm like floating. I've been like fighting this man for like 2 minutes. I'm floating away down the river, and they're like, "We got him." I'm like, "Cool. I'll see you downriver a little bit." And as soon as this man, I was like out. I was in shock. I couldn't move for like probably 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, man.
After I got to land, he was right as rain after like 3 or 4 minutes. He was walking around. Yeah, he was fine.
You did all the work, buoy.
I literally did all the work.
Man.
But yeah, and there was a period of time where I was sure that I had gotten both him and myself killed, and I was really mad about it.
Snap. Yeah.
Yeah,
you went through all the stages of grief out there.
Yeah. But there's no grief worse than digging out an old console and plugging in your game, and it tries to connect to the server, and the servers have been taken off, and you can't play that game ever again.
That's even made worse. There was the era when single-player games required an online connection.
Oof.
Yeah, big oof. So yeah, definitely feel that pain. Moment of silence, if you will.
Yeah. To their credit, I think most of the publishers still like support the stores and the servers that like your whatever your PS4 would call out to. Other than like the really old hardware, I haven't had any issues or like know anyone who has any issues trying to play a game that they bought and not being able to play it. I know it happens, but
yeah, I think overall the industry has gotten better about it.
Well, I think it's not gotten better. I just think I think it's the opposite. I think it's getting worse.
Oh,
but what's saved us up till now is that the consoles that are kind of in the age where you would expect them to shut down the servers and not talk to them anymore were barely online consoles to begin with. Like the Wii is the newest, casualty. But who plays Wii anymore?
The Just Dance crowd.
Right, that's fair. Jeez, they really do. Actually, I heard it's funny. I had heard a while ago that the Wii servers are going down, and it was a big deal. But I think that they came back up again in the last week.
We will not be stopped.
Which is super weird, right? They just went silent, and then more than half a year later, they're like, actually, we're still here.
There must have been some backlash, some outcry.
I mean, there definitely was at first, but not in the past couple months. I don't know.
Don't you guys have Wii U's? Bro, I forget sometimes that the Wii U even exists. Oh, man. Didn't the Wii U have a virtual console?
Yeah, it was backwards compatible. I'm pretty sure it had the same virtual console.
Yeah, probably one of the only redeeming qualities of the Wii U.
You could play GameCube games. Wait, could you? I don't think you could. On the Wii, I don't think it actually supported GameCube games, the Wii U.
That's a shame.
I mean, that's 2 generations. That's fair. And that's a physical disc you have to put in there. So they would have to... Well, they had a disc reader.
It did, yeah. A little bitty disc.
Maybe there was some reason they couldn't. Maybe the hardware was... No, because it was just basically just a Wii Plus. Like, it was almost the same hardware, from what I recall.
It seemed like it. A lot of people were confused about what the Wii U actually was. I still kind of am. I've seen a Wii U and played one, and still really don't understand why it exists.
It's sad because people talk about what a banger the Wii U is, but they just didn't have any good games, or didn't have enough adoption.
Yeah, they got good games now after the Switch. A couple of the Switch games were built for Wii U, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa. The Switch was the first console we got after the Wii U.
Yeah?
That just feels so far removed from the Wii U.
Yeah, it feels like the Switch was the first one after the Wii. To me. It
feels like the Wii U just doesn't exist.
It's a blip.
Yeah, it's sad.
So what do you plan to do when... And this is another question about preservation. What do you plan to do when Steam and Epic Games, if they decide to close their doors? Yeah.
Oh, we use the same phrase. That's fun. That's so Steam and now Epic Games, I guess, have gotten a lot of slack because all the stuff that we're complaining about is like their starting business model. But people just trust them. They just trust that the Steam servers are always going to be online, that you'll always be able to download your game. Mm-hmm. The client's always going to be able to play the game that you downloaded. Like, there's not going to be any... I guess if you remove a game from Steam, it can still be played on your computer if you happen to have it. So that's good. It isn't like the game will just, like, become unplayable.
I've had mixed experiences with... I mean, maybe it could be the way that I download them. I guess maybe through Steam. But there's been games that I haven't been able to play, even if they didn't really seem to be deeply, I don't know, connected to Steam, if you will, like to get the rewards and badges and stuff. That when I, double click the exe for the game, it would still open Steam first.
Well, that's because the games run inside of Steam.
Yeah.
But in theory, you could have a copy of Steam and not need like an online aspect.
Oh, so be an offline Steam.
There is an offline mode for Steam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I've never used that.
Yes.
That's good to know. It's reassuring.
What I would like to see, I think a good solution would be able to think about this. Because when you download a game, I don't know what like protections are on the game to keep it from playing on like another Steam account, for example. I've never even considered that, which seems like an obvious thing for me to consider, but I haven't. But anyway, it would be nice to be able to download a game from Steam, package it up, and save it basically as a ROM.
Mm.
And that way, if Steam ever disappears, you can just open the runtime and play the game. That'd be ideal. That'd be great.
It would be ideal.
Yeah.
So
even better would be to be able to remove the Steam like dependency.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know how difficult that would be, because I think it actually isn't just a DRM issue. It's like a mechanical issue of like, linking libraries and stuff like that, especially for like controller support.
Yeah.
Steam handles all that stuff, or most of it, especially for newer games.
Yeah, probably a big to-do. Probably not impossible, but yeah, it would be ideal if you could remove all those dependencies. I was going to say, to your point about, I guess, playing games with different Steam accounts, I kind of tested this.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Sort of, yeah. So my brother has... He had a Steam account, and he came over one day, and he wanted to play one of his games on my computer. And so he logged in and downloaded this game. It was, what was it? NRG, something like that. It was a driving game. And so once he left, I still had the game downloaded, and I tried to open it, and it let me play it for a little while, but then it wouldn't let me like reopen the game. It was some really weird thing that happened. I was able to play the game once, but then it like registered that I didn't actually own the game and wouldn't let me open it again, and I had to buy it.
Devious.
Yeah, I didn't try to steal it. I just wanted to know.
The sneaky free trial.
Yeah, got him. So I just need to log into his account every time before I open the game, and I can open it for free.
Yeah.
In theory. But I'm kind of worried, I guess, because I have a pretty extensive Steam library.
Sure.
And it's at the point to where, we've talked about this a little bit before. I don't think I've ever played the games, but I don't know. To me, it feels similar to, I have a shelf in my house with DVDs on it. And that's how I feel about my Steam library, is that even though I'm not watching all those DVDs at this moment, at some point, I put forth the effort to accumulate these things. And I don't really feel comfortable with the idea somebody else can just take them away from me at any moment.
Yeah. So here's the conundrum. And I don't really have a solution off the top of my head.
Well, then I don't want your conundrum.
Okay. Let's talk about clothes hangers. Here's the conundrum, okay? It's a digital game. And it would be easily replicable if it didn't have some sort of DRM on it. So that'd be, you don't want to bow to piracy and just make it open for everyone. Mm-hmm. But the only way really to like connect to you as a person or as an account holder is through an online check-in.
Oh.
Right? Like, or because there has to be some sort of check-in process. Now, what some people are saying about blockchain is like, oh, you could have a decentralized check-in process so that, there isn't just one server that Valve needs to constantly be like supporting. It would just be kind of like something that everyone pitches in on, which is an interesting idea, but I hate blockchain stuff. Let me rephrase. I hate using blockchain stuff when you could easily use something else. And so it shouldn't be that hard to have some sort of like peer-to-peer system that doesn't require spending copious amounts of energy and other crazy stuff.
So what you're suggesting is NFTs.
I mean, there's definitely like some positive ideas there in terms of what we're talking about, ownership of a game. Mm-hmm. If NFTs actually worked as a platform, then yeah, like you could buy the game and you would own it, and you could transfer it to somebody else and they would own it and you wouldn't anymore. And in theory, this would be a system that will live as long as the internet does. And, maybe it doesn't need to check in every single time. So like, that could work. I think NFTs as they are have a lot of downsides, specifically because they're based on blockchain. But you could have something similar that isn't blockchain based. You could basically have NFTs without it being like an append only crypto ledger.
Yeah. And it seems like, I guess eventually they will need to have a similar solution. Unless, I mean...
Well, I don't think so. I don't think that Sony or Microsoft are inclined to create such a system. And whatever system, even if we come up with a system, they would have to support it, right? So it'd be hard.
I guess. Do you know anything about the PlayStation computer or whatever it's called? They're moving into... Hopefully it wasn't like an April Fool's joke that I'm thinking of, but apparently PlayStation's...
Fooled? Huh? You got fooled?
I might have, but I was curious if you'd heard anything about this PlayStation moving into the, I guess, PC space. Was it PlayStation PC? Maybe was what it was called. But effectively, I guess their answer to how Microsoft is... What's their platform where you can play their games either on the Xbox or on your computer?
It's just the Windows Store, I'm pretty sure.
Game Pass, maybe?
No, it's the Windows Store, but the Game Pass is a subscription that exists on the store, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that, but yeah, I mean, it could have been like a rumor, but PlayStation PC apparently.
So they're maybe you're thinking they're going to build a PC client that can run their games, their PlayStation games.
I'm curious to see, because they are starting to make the shift into having like PlayStation exclusive games be available on the PC in some capacity. So I don't know. They've been making moves, like they are allowed cross-platform recently, and then now this. I don't know. I think they might just be trying to follow the money.
As long as they still let us play games on Steam, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So do you think Steam, Epic Game Store are going to go anywhere anytime soon? Think Meta is going to
definitely
destroy them?
Definitely not Steam. Steam will live forever. Epic will probably also live forever because of that Fortnite money.
Fortnite would have to die first.
Yeah, Fortnite would have to die. But the thing about Steam is that they have... I mean, the Steam store is just bonkers.
It is.
It's the de facto Play Store, like, PC platform.
Mm-hmm.
They take a huge cut of the profits.
They do.
And they also sell games. They sell like Half-Life, and
right.
They have some hardware out now too. Like there's a... No,
they've got a lot of credibility in the space, despite the drawbacks. So they're really hard to compete with.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, they'd have to back out.
They really would. Why would they?
I have no idea.
But if they did, I feel good about them because they work so hard to support Linux and like open source gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wonder if they were to back out and be like, we're not going to host a platform anymore, if they would like open source the servers and the client and everything, so they could do basically what I described, which is just have it, have the games that you own installed somewhere or downloaded from somewhere, and then you can play them without having to like connect to the Steam service.
I think that'd be a great way to like maintain like a good relationship with their user base if they needed to, back out for whatever reason.
Right.
Because if they just shut everything down and just took everyone's stuff along with them, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, there'd be nothing well, that's not true. So we talked about like, what can you do about stopping the encroachment of buying game licenses instead of buying games?
Yeah.
I was going to say nothing, but like you can vote with your dollar to some extent, but more realistically, you can pirate. And I mean, like,
you can be a pirate.
I mean, I don't mean what we've been talking about where you illegally play something and you steal, but you can like, be part of the movement to save and dump ROMs and distribute them to people who own the games. You know, you could be part of the movement to like find technologies that will allow us to do that more realistically and robust features to avoid piracy and stuff. Like, not everyone can or will be part of that movement, but if you care about preserving games and if you care about owning your games and moving towards a future where we own our games and we're not beholden to like a server outage or something,
join the rebellion.
Join the rebellion. I mean, I'm half talking to myself. I don't. As soon as I finish playing a game on my PC, I delete it. I don't keep my games around.
I mean, yeah,
but maybe I should.
Games these days just take up so much space. If they weren't so big, I'd feel more inclined to, keep them installed. But it's more of a hassle to keep them around when you're trying to do something else later than it is just to keep them for preservation purposes. Like,
Steam is cool. Steam is cool because you can define secondary libraries. Did you know that?
Like where to download your games?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actively move between. So you could just have a huge external hard drive and have that be a secondary hard, and when you finish a game, just move it to that instead of, dang, maybe I should do that. I do have a huge external drive that I keep around.
You've solved the problem.
That's it. Buy hard drives. Buy tape.
So do you think that, I guess in this idea of the DRM and preservation, one of the things that's helped us up to this point, we talked about a little bit earlier, was the fact that there are still physical versions of games now that you can, to some extent, play. But do you think that physical versions of games are going to be phased out entirely?
They're going to be what? You cut out there.
Do you think that physical versions of games are going to be phased out entirely?
Not for a while. Maybe in the future, but not for a long time. It's too much part of our culture, I think, to want to own something. But yeah, I mean, that's the obvious conclusion. It's cheaper, it's easier. Not just cheaper to distribute because you don't have to print things on a disc and then mail them around, but also cheaper to build the console. Like Sony and not Xbox. Sony's already building consoles without a disc drive.
Yeah.
Right? Like, actually, yeah, Xbox did that too, didn't they?
I think they started the whole digital version.
Yeah. The Xbox One S AD, whatever AD stood for. Anti-disc.
Anti-disc.
But it was funny because the initial spelled out Xbox sad.
Sad.
It was like very, very good. Very good.
Whoever is in charge of their marketing and like naming their consoles, fire them. Please.
Fire them or give them a raise. It's one of those things where it's like, this is either the best thing you've ever seen or the worst thing you've ever seen.
I don't know. I feel like they've been missing ever since the 360.
360 is a pretty nice name. But where do you go? Where do you go from 360?
I mean, they could have at least done a little bit of fan service and had a 720. I don't know what it would have been, but
that's the problem. Your first thought of where to go after the 360 was a meme.
And
that's the conundrum they have is, crap, how do we come up with an actually good non-meme name for our console?
They could have, maybe they go to Xbox, it would have been the 3, which...
Yeah, they should have just numbered it.
I mean, PlayStation, they made the choice. They stuck to numbers, and it's been really simple to know which one you're playing. Nintendo, they've come up with like really, I don't know, like names that make sense once you interact with it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, so like the PlayStation is using sequential naming.
Mm-hmm.
The Nintendo's are
like immersive names.
I would say like non sequitur names. Like they're not related to each other except the Wii U,
which was a mistake.
But yeah, like you said, they're also based. Each name relates to a fun feature that they built into it. The Xbox is also using non sequitur. Well, it's not non sequitur because if you think about it, like 360 kind of has this sense of like encompassing everything, and then you move from that to 1. So like from 360 where you have 360 separate degrees, but then to 1. But then series is like the new name, and series is kind of like, from 1, how do you build on 1? You have a series of things. It's kind of like abstract naming. So it's like what Nintendo's doing, but has nothing to do with any features.
To me, it seems like it's the names you give of prototypes, like that people are never supposed to know or say.
No, those always have like jaunty names, like names that are like all of Google's hardware is named after fish internally.
Well, I think there's I'm thinking like the prototypes, like when you're first, like when you're making incrementally, you're making something, so you give it like a generic first part of a name, and then like symbols that mean like numbers or letters that reference what you did to it versus
like a version number.
Yeah, a version number, pretty much. Like that's how the Xbox ones, like but not in a sequential way like PlayStation, but more. I don't even know, just not random,
non-sequential.
Yeah.
I will say I don't terribly mind the name, like 1 series, but then the sub consoles, the S and the X, what is that? What do S and X mean? It took me years to like learn the difference between the S and the X and understand which one was better than the other.
What's the difference?
The X is better. I don't know what the specific differences are, but I know that one is, I don't even know so the S is worse than the X, but I don't know if it was worse than the base console for the Xbox One. And for the Xbox Series, I don't even think there is a base console. I think it's just Xbox Series X or Xbox Series S. And they picked the 2 worst letters to use after Xbox Series.
Because they both sound very similar to X. One of them is X.
One of them is in fact X. They sound very similar. One of them is X, and one of them is the other is what series starts with. It's a tongue twister. It's terrible.
Wait a minute. So the Series S and Series X are different than the 1. Well, or are they still Xbox Ones?
No, they're Xbox Series. There's an Xbox One S and an Xbox One X. That's what you're thinking of.
Please.
And yes, those are different consoles. I think they came out after the 1. There was a 1. Okay. And then there was a 1S and a 1X. I don't think there was an Xbox Series. I think they went straight through Series S and Series X.
So they immediately made 2 versions.
Yes.
I'm done. I'm finished.
Kind of like the PS5 and PS5 discless.
PS5 Slim to come.
Oh God, yeah. They're at least Slim and Pro are meaningful words. Like you can understand what they mean in context.
And they still have the original name before it, so it's the PS5 Slim and Pro. So there's no confusion.
Well, now it's going to be confusing because they have the PS5 and the PS5 discless. So are they going to have a slim version of both of those?
I feel like they're only going to do a slim of the discless.
You know what they should do? A slim of the discless and a pro of the disced. So then it would just become the PS5 Slim and the PS5 Pro. And you can just know that one is,
But they're both, I guess, the Pro inside, I would imagine, as far as whatever makes the Pro the Pro.
No, they'll both be. No, because the Slim, the PS4 Slim is
you're right.
Not related to the Pro at all. It's really just the PS4 but Slim.
That's a good point. Yeah. So that would break things. Never mind. Don't take my suggestion.
No, you hear that, Sony? Ignore him.
Cool.
Well, do we own things? Can we own them? Or do we just own them for a certain amount of time?
Everything is fleeting. We are just borrowers in this world. I don't know why I said it like that, but I did.
Don't buy games from publishers who only, sell a disc with nothing on it. Don't do it. Don't support them.
And don't pre-order digital releases, right?
Yeah, honestly, don't do it at all. But unless it comes with something you really want, and the game is going to be good. I always stress that because you don't always know the game is going to be good. How many of you people listening to me right now pre-ordered a game and regretted it? Too many.
You see all the hands that were raised for the listeners. Yeah, that'll indicate.
Yes, there are dozens of you.
Well, if you don't have any more advice to give, Steve, do you have any final thoughts before we
drink lots of water, brush your teeth, take a shower.
Very good advice.
That's all I have. Yeah.
Pay your taxes.
I wouldn't advise you pay your taxes. Taxation is theft.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
Commit tax fraud.
I'm kidding. You should pay your taxes. Taxation can be theft, but isn't by definition theft. And if you say it is, just don't say it to me because I don't want to talk to you.
Ooh. So you have your orders, everyone. DM Steve.
DM Steve at Kyle.
No.
theyam.gmail.com.
Now I'm going to have to go make that Gmail. Nobody else can have it. Kyle the Yam. Awesome. Well, I don't have any final thoughts. I think you pretty much covered everything. You covered hygiene and,
Yeah,
finances.
I think I'm all talked out.
Well, then that's going to be our show for today. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We were kind of all over the place today. We didn't have Brad to reel us in and keep us on track most of the time. Yeah. But
do you think think we'll have Brad next time? Do you think we'll have him back?
I think it's a toss-up. I'm pretty sure he's fled the country after taking your advice about tax evasion. So we'll just have to find out on the next episode to see if Brad's here or who else is missing. It might just be you.
If it's just me, I'm just going to watch a movie and talk during the movie, I think.
So just commentate on...
That actually wouldn't be a terrible idea. Get on Netflix. Just be like, all right, I'm starting the movie, 3, 2, 1 now. Like, you can't see or hear the movie. Mm-hmm. You just have to play along and listen to me. That'd be kind of fun. And Netflix couldn't be mad at me for that.
They could, and they will. They'll find you.
No.
Say, we know which movie you're commentating on, and we won't have it.
Ooh, even better. I would probably just have it on a Netflix party and share it with with our Discord.
Then
other people can watch. That's right, yeah.
That'd be fun, actually.
You heard it here first.
Do more things with the Discord.
If there's ever a solo Steve episode, it's going to be a Netflix watch party.
It's going to be an interactive experience.
Yeah.
You and Steve. Paid admission.
Paid, of course.
But
Painted admission.
Painted. Hit us up in the Discord.
Or tweet at us.
Oh, yeah, we're on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. You can listen to this podcast that you're hearing right now on YouTube, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud. And if I missed any, we're probably on that platform. Apple Podcasts. That's what we're on too.
Apple.
But just search us on Google and we'll come up. And you can listen to us there. You can interact with us on the Discord, on all the social medias. But I want to thank you today, Steve, for being here today.
You're extremely welcome. You're welcome anytime. Literally any moment of my life, you are welcome.
Well, I only want to be welcome in this moment.
Okay.
And also, Bradston, thank you for being here in spirit today. He's still tied up in the closet with tape over his mouth, as you can hear. And thanks, even more excited thank you to our Super Agile family that's been listening and supporting us. As I said earlier, check us out on other platforms. We really appreciate all of the love and support that we get. Everybody who listens and shares the podcast. we couldn't do it without you. Shout out to everybody in the Discord. And until next time, be easy, y'all. Take care, stay safe. Peace.